Okay, today we're talking about the power of curiosity, how to lead with curiosity and what that can do to drive business growth and leadership growth for you personally inside of your business. My guest today is Alana Winter. I'll tell you more about her in a second, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we feature top entrepreneurs, business leaders, and thought leaders and ask them how they built key relationships to get where they are today. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corkin here. I'm the host of the show, and every week I get to talk to interesting and smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs from all kinds of companies and organizations. We've had Netflix and Grubhub, Redfin, Gusto, Kinko's, YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard, lots of great episodes in the archives. Go check those out on your podcast player of choice. And of course, this episode brought to you by Rise 25, our company where we help B2B businesses to get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with Done For You podcast and content marketing. And you can go to rise25.com to learn all about it, or email our team at support@rise25.com. All right, my guest here today is Alana Winter, and she's a serial entrepreneur that has started a number of different companies, some interesting ones. She's the president of Transformative Forum, which she runs retreats, EO and YPO forums and workshops. That's actually how we met, coincidentally, at an EO event. She had just gotten done leading a workshop for a group of entrepreneurs that were friends of mine. And so excited to have her here on the program. But she's also built and operated a number of different businesses, including a fashion accessories business in Australia, 3 different successful video distribution companies in the United States, founder and president of MI6 Academy and Stiletto Spy School. What's that? We're going to find out in a second. So Alana, it's so great to have you here today. And I want to start with this great story of you were 4 years old. Okay, you're 4 years old. You come from a family that was entrepreneurs in the garment business, and there's a box of scraps that you turned into profit. I love that. More relevant than ever today. Tell me about how you did it.
But my dad had just opened up a new warehouse, and the old tenants had left a box in there. I'm 4 years old. I go over the box as big as I am. I look through it, and fashion accessories later in life, was fascinated with them from the time I was 4. And I said, Dad, what's this? And he said, oh, honey, we're just going to throw that out. And I said, oh, can I have it? He said, sure. I dragged it down the hall. I went and knocked on the door of the company next door and said, hi, I'm selling fashion accessories. And the guy looked down at me, little pint-sized me, and said, oh, okay, honey, I'll buy the whole thing from you. And I said, oh, great. Wow, this selling stuff is really easy.
I nailed it first time out.
He said, but I'll need you to hold it for me. And I thought for a second, and I thought, okay. I said, but I'll have to charge you storage.
Oh my God. This is like, these are lessons that it takes people decades to learn.
He was like, where are you from? He went storming in, accosted my father. He's like, who are you? What are you sending your kid out to do? And my father's like, what are you talking about? He's like, you didn't send her out to do that? My father's like, I don't even know what she did. And I remember this man looked down and he said, I want to be your business partner when you grow up.
That is amazing. That is amazing. I mean, let's unpack that a little bit. Like, just the fact of taking something that was someone else's castaways, but had value to someone else. There's lots of people I talk to that struggle with the psychology behind that. They would convince themselves, I can't do that. I can't take something that I got for free and then resell it to someone else. And yet that psychology, you didn't have to overcome that in order to make that sale.
Yeah, it's about looking at value, right? And, that whole saying, right? One man's trash is another man's treasure. There are so many things that we can do to repurpose things into different uses. I mean, for heaven's sake, that's what's being done to clean up the atmosphere right now. People are capturing carbon out of the air and turning it into concrete and building materials to solve a problem and create something of value. We have to be able to think that way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's been amazing businesses created out of taking something that was some kind of castaway or discharge from one process and then turning it into something valuable in another area. So that's so cool. So you're what was it like growing up in your family with a father who was an entrepreneur?
Well, from the time I was probably about that 4 years old, my father just used to ask me so honey, what kind of business are you going to start when you grow up? Right. It was the only option. I actually didn't know that people who had jobs could make real money. I felt a little cheated later in life by having not known that. So I could have had
Mm.
the option, because sometimes being an entrepreneur isn't always the easy choice, but it
Yeah.
was definitely the only choice in my family.
Yeah. So you actually you started college at 16, which is quite a young age to go away to college. And then when you graduated, I imagine you're probably 19 or 20 at that point, which is pretty young to be graduating from college. You come home and you talk to your dad and had a conversation. What was that like?
Um, so because it was always a given that I was going to start a business, I mean, at one point when I started college like a week after I turned 16, and my dad was like, okay, you're young, you should go to school, that's fine. But when I turned 17, he was like, I'm spending an awful lot on tuition. I can take all that and give you that to start a business now. He said, you'll never get another dime. So business or
To
college.
lose it. Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
like, I knew that I did not know enough to know what to do with that money, and that would be a disaster. So I was like, I'll go to college and I'll figure out how to get money for a business later on my own. So when I graduated from college, my dad picked me up. Had gone traveling. He picked me up from the airport. He was like, so what are you going to do now? What did you figure out for your life? And I was like, and he
Don't know.
looked at me like, he's like, you don't have a plan? I
Hmm.
was like, no, I don't have a plan. So
Hmm.
my dad offered me a job for a month, paying me minimum wage to work at a video store that was over an hour away from the house. And I was like, okay, I'll take it. So I did that. For At the end of the month, he called me and he said, guess what? You still have a job. Then just found out the manager's stealing. So I need you to run the store.
Wow.
So I worked for my dad for about a year, a little over a year. Helped him open up some more stores. He was starting like a little chain. And in doing that, at the time, I know this sounds crazy today, but at the time, videos cost like $75 to $100 wholesale. So opening up a store was really expensive. So we would get in the car and drive around and try to find other stores and ask if they had any inventory that like had slowed down for them, that we could buy from them at a discount,
Mm.
give them cash, and we could open our store at a lower cost,
Mm.
which we did. And it was great. And it gave us a huge competitive advantage. So after working for my dad for a little over a year.
So was the competitive advantage that you were spending so much less to build up, but I imagine you weren't buying the premium like the new releases then. How did you handle that?
You still had to buy some movies at full price for sure, but your inventory, like the thousands of videos that are
The
filling
back
this
catalog, yeah,
back
yeah.
catalog, we were getting for a third of the cost. And really nobody else was doing that. They were all going in and buying everything brand new.
Yeah, smart, smart. So you do that for a year plus, and then what happened after that?
Then my dad called the store one day and fired me.
Why?
Because I'd hit traffic and I opened the store 5 minutes late that day. He would call every day. He would be calling every day at like the store is supposed to open at 9. He would start calling every day at about 8:45 to make sure I was there early.
Was he so he's like your business partner? He was this is his store, or you
Oh, he
were
was not my business partner at all.
okay. He was the owner of the store and you were the manager? Okay.
I was the manager.
Got it. And so he fired you because you were 5 minutes late. That seems quite egregious.
Well, dad was strict.
Uh-huh.
And he was actually, I mean, some of the things that he taught me about business and about really the way that you had to pay attention to detail and that kind of stuff was good. But yeah, he was strict. That was not okay to be 5 minutes late to open a store. So he fired me. And the phone call was very short. And in that phone call, he said, you're fired. I said, and he said, by the way, we drove around and we saved a lot of money opening up our stores. He said, I bet there's a business there.
Hmm.
And I said, okay. And I hung up and it took about 10 minutes for that to register. So I called him back in 10 minutes and I said, hey, you have some inventory in your stores that's kind of slow that you could probably use cash for. Can I take that on consignment and use that to start a business? And he said, yep.
Mm.
So my guess is that was his intention from the start. So I was in business by 3 o'clock that day.
With a new business model.
Yep.
Buying and so did it expand from there? Did you start to go out to other businesses and be like, you have inventory that's just sitting there and I will take it on consignment and go sell it to someone else?
I didn't do it in other industries. To some extent, actually, that's what my dad was doing. My dad was in the garment center, and that's what my dad was doing in the garment center and with fabrics. No, I did it with anything that would be in video stores. So videos, DVDs, all that kind of stuff, and turned it into a national business. And I supplied, you know, public libraries and Blockbuster Video and mom and pop video stores. It sounds so antiquated to talk about that now,
Yeah.
but they were a thing.
Yeah. And so you ended up you ended up kind of like did it become like a distribution company? Were you buying from the studios at that point and then selling to the Blockbusters and the retail video rental places?
Everything.
Yeah.
We bought from mom and pop stores that were going out of business. We do liquidations and buy all their inventory, chains that were going out of business, excess inventory from studios, stuff from other distributors around the country. And we would supply anything from retail stores to, it used to be you'd walk into stores and you would see the displays of videos for sale for $9.99. Like we would put sets of those displays up in all kinds of stores. So really any place that as a consumer you would have gone to rent or buy a video, we were supplying.
And you eventually had 3 separate video distribution companies. So what was the difference between the 3?
Well, there was one that focused on libraries, and then there was one where we actually got rights to movie and put those out.
And why make them different businesses?
Liability reasons, whatever.
Okay.
So
Okay.
to separate entities.
Separate. Okay. No, like business reason behind it, really, but more of a legal reason. Okay. Got it. And did you stay in this? I don't know if you got out of the business before everything started to change. The market classically, I actually had the co-founder of Netflix on my podcast a while back. Netflix moves in, Blockbuster is no longer. There's one left in Bend, Oregon. I've been to it. And so were you still in the business when things started to change?
I was still in the business, but a couple of things happened. One is I had worked really hard to open up accounts and supply public libraries. And believe it or not, public libraries still carry DVDs. And
yeah, they do. Yeah.
So that actually was a great business, selling to libraries. They're wonderful customers. I love libraries. Actually loved hanging out with librarians. I love books. So it was really fun. So I had taken in a business partner, had a whole business partner disaster, but we did wind up selling the business. But that business actually would still be viable, just working with libraries.
Got it. Tell me about the business partner. What happened there?
I took in a business partner to run the day-to-day operations of the business, who was a competitor, who was also did the same thing that I did overstock and did resale and did distribution, liquidations, all that stuff. And we'd known each other for a really long time. And we set up what seemed like a terrific business model to me. And
let's pause right there. So why at the time that you decided to partner up with a competitor, why? What was the motivation behind it?
A major life lesson. I had gone into this business because it was a great opportunity that was there for me. It was very profitable. It was a great time in the market. The business had nothing to do with who I was or what I valued, anything that I wanted to bring into the world. It was just an opportunity. And businesses get hard. And when businesses get hard and they're not tied to the core of who you are, it becomes a real slog. And there were days that I woke up in the morning and I pulled the covers over my head and I did not want to get out of bed to go into my office and run this business that I had run, right? It was just, said it was hard. It was a slog. And I had tried everything under the sun to spark my interest in. I would try creative marketing stuff. I went on a kick where I was hiring young single mothers from, there were some bad areas around my neighborhood, some Passaic and areas like that. And, to create social programs, but
And all of those were those were initiatives that were good to do for the broader community, but it sounds like you were also doing them to try and find a way that you could rediscover some kind of spark or passion for your own business.
I was trying to find a purpose and meaning for the business. Absolutely. And I had run out of rabbits to pull out of the hat.
Yeah.
And I had close relationships with some of my competitors, and we would discuss how we felt about our businesses. And so this one competitor, he said, well, you know what? I've got excess capacity in terms of his warehouse space, his staff, and all that kind of stuff. And we had some meetings, and we came up with a business structure where he would run the business, run all the day-to-day logistics of it. Everything, all operations would be moved into his facility. And because I had established business with the libraries, which was really hard to get and was really steady, and they were great clients. They weren't going bankrupt. They weren't closing like stores where they always paid their bills. They were wonderful to work with. They're hard to get as clients, but wonderful to work with once you do get them as clients. And we would do a 50-50 split of the profit. So he would pay out of his share of the profit all of the operating costs. I would have 0 operating costs, but get 50% of the gross profit. Good deal.
Yeah.
So that's why I did it.
So at what point did you notice that this may not be meant for the long haul?
This is a funny story. I called the bank for something and to check on something in the account. And the bank asked me, we had the name of our company was, and the bank asked me which account. And we had only opened one account. And as soon as the bank asked me, this is back in the old days, you call, your local branch and talk to a teller.
Yeah.
And as soon as the teller asked me which account, I knew instantly that meant he had opened up another account. And the only reason he would have opened up another account
to hide money
and checks into it.
And
totally.
and there must have been something else that caused you to instantly know that something was awry.
You're right. Back up. Right. That's why I called the bank. Totally forgot about this. Because I was living overseas and I would call him. I'd come in once a month and we'd have meetings. And I called him to set up a meeting, and he was always in the office. So I could just call anytime, be like, hey, I'll come in on Tuesday. And it was a Friday. And I called him and said, I'll be in on Tuesday. And he stuttered and stammered a little bit. And he said, I'm not sure I'll be here on Tuesday. And I knew from that difference in the tone of his voice,
something was up.
Something was up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually why I called the bank.
So what did you find out? There must have been money missing.
There were indeed 2 accounts. So when the teller said which account, I said, oh, you know what? Silly me, right? Of course. Could you just fax me over the statements for both of those? And so I looked at the statements and I realized there were checks going into this other account that were not showing up on our books. Then I went in electronically to the records, and those checks were not showing up in our accounts. So I realized what was going on. I went and actually physically visited some of those customers because I had the records of checks that they had paid, and just very homey and folksy, bring a box of donuts. I just want to go over your account and how we're servicing you and what you're getting from us, and collected evidence from those clients. And then
wow. So there's a lot of people who would immediately confront their business partner, but it sounds like you took your time to investigate it further. That requires a high level of patience.
Well, as you mentioned, one of my businesses, MI6 Academy and Stiletto Spy School. So
now I know the inspiration.
It totally was, right? And so I had learned from, those programs are fun, fantasy, adventure, come and be James or Jane Bond for a day, but they're super practical takeaway to these lessons, right? And it's about how you use the mindset of the spies and special ops to get ahead in business. And one of the really key lessons from that is being able to see what's actually going on around you. We tend to, as humans, we get a little bit of information, and based on that little bit of information, we jump, and then we miss so much other stuff. Mm-hmm. So I had learned from the instructors at spy school that when there's something out of the ordinary, you need to pay attention to that, because that is either a threat or an opportunity. So I heard my business partner's tone of voice change. Oh, something's out of the ordinary. My alert went up. That's either a threat or an opportunity. And what you learn is that when you sense there's either of those, you don't blow it up. You investigate to see what's going on. So it was completely the lessons from spy school that kicked in and that saved me. And that's why when he reacted that way on the phone, I didn't automatically say to him, what are you talking about? What's going on? I heard it and I just said, oh, okay, well, you let me know when's good. But I knew that I had to investigate. So I investigated. And again, normally what we do is, when I found that from the bank, normally what we do is go into explosion mode, right? But that doesn't serve us very well.
Nope.
So also I had learned from my instructors, okay, you have to now that I knew I'd been hit, right? If I'm going to take it to actually the allegory of what we're learning at spy school, right? In hand-to-hand combat, you've been hit. You don't fall to pieces on the ground. You go, okay, I've been hit. What are my opportunities? What opportunities do I have? What targets can I hit? And
so you mentioned you learned from your instructors at spy school, but I thought spy school came later. Had you, no, you had already started this spy school? So you already had this business, coincidentally, when this fraud happened. And so oh, interesting. So you had, and you learned from your own instructors on how to handle this situation.
Yeah, as I'd been doing training with them before I even launched the program to the public, right? As I'd been investigating and doing training with them, these were the lessons from things like hand-to-hand combat. These were the direct lessons that I learned there that I applied into the business setting.
How long did you continue to investigate before you confronted your business partner, and how much did you find out was missing?
Oh, it was days. So I think it was a Friday that there was that phone call, and I called the bank right away, and I got the records from the bank, and I went through them all weekend. And by Monday morning, first thing Monday morning, I was sitting with clients, and I spent all day on Monday gathering all the evidence that I needed. And I went to the police and to the DA. And by Tuesday, he was being served with papers, and I was sitting, I'd walked right past him. He hadn't noticed me walk in. I'd walked right past him, and I was sitting at a desk in the back and sitting at the computer, just downloading files and files and files. And he was being served with papers.
Wow. What was that like emotionally, this period of time for you?
You know, it's interesting. And again, these were lessons from spy school. In the past, I had 2 cases of employee theft before this.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I had a bookkeeper who embezzled. She took out a line of credit in my name,
wow.
Crazy. And I had another employee who had come in and cleaned out in the warehouse and crazy stuff. And in both of those instances, John, I had this really incredible emotional volcano inside, right? It was this visceral, just seeing red. And I mean, I remember crying and calling them and yelling, and this very, very strong emotional reaction. And in this case, and again, this was the lessons that I was learning that are the basis of what the spy school programs were about. You know, you don't, if a Navy SEAL is driving his tank and an explosive device goes off, he doesn't crumple and start crying.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. That wouldn't be the best reaction. Yeah. Right.
Right. Like, they don't have an emotional reaction. It's just something that happened, and you have to figure out what your best response to it is.
Yeah.
So when this happened and I saw this, the volcano started for a nanosecond, and
you pushed it back down.
Yeah, but I didn't
Yeah.
like, it's not like suppressing it. It was like, this actually, it's not even appropriate for this situation, right?
Mm.
This is somebody, my business partner was somebody, as it turned out, he was under financial pressures. He made some terrible choices that got him into financial pressures. And then he made terrible choices, seeing an opportunity to embezzle and steal from me. Those were really, really bad life choices. And I was not going to sit back and let it happen. I was going to stop him. But I wasn't like getting emotional about it, just
Yeah.
really didn't serve. Like it wasn't personal. And so taking it personally just didn't serve. But I didn't see that before. Of course, this was a new
Yeah.
learning.
So was it the two previous employee thefts that had inspired you to start the Stiletto Spy School? Like I'm curious, where's the natural curiosity that predates this business partner who defrauded you?
Yeah. So just as a kid, I watched too many James Bond movies with my dad. And I figured like one day I'm going to grow up and I'm going to be like the Bond girls. This is a girl who never learned how to ride a bicycle, can't roller skate, like never learned how to do anything at all. So I was like, but I will be cool like them. One day I will grow up. I will go to the school that they go to because obviously there is a school to learn to be that cool and that
Yeah.
confident and have all those skills.
So, all right. So you react with composure, you gather all the evidence, you go in even into the office, download all the data he's served with papers. What happens from there? How do you rebuild your life? How do you deal with, I mean, I've seen this happen with others where, simultaneously a business partner, past client, whatever is being prosecuted, is going to jail. They have to deal with that. But while they have to put the business back together. So what did you do?
Yeah. It was a journey, I mean, we went through legal process, which takes a really long time, even when you are in the right and somebody else is clearly as guilty as could be. That was probably about 2 years, and in that time, I was really reflecting on what was next for me and what I wanted to do next. And is that I had started studying the hand-to-hand combat, and I had this kind of idea, but it was vague. I hadn't like there weren't any programs to the public or anything at all during that time. And what I realized was that whatever I did next had to be not just because it was a good business opportunity and that I didn't have my heart in it, but it had to be something that I would love even when times got hard, and that it really meant something to me and what I wanted to bring into the world. So I went on a quest to discover like what my true core values were and what that would mean and what that would look like. And I couldn't find any programs out there. I went to a bunch of them, but I found that most programs that I went to, and it's like, find your core values. They just hand you a sheet of paper and they're like, pick off of this list.
Right. Write it out. Yeah.
And when I did that, and I don't want to diss people who run workshops like that. It's just that there's so much that we're conditioned to that when I looked at that list and I circled all these words on a list, I knew that I was circling words that I had been conditioned to think should be my core values. And I knew that there was a deeper question as to what was really me, what was I here to do in this life, as opposed to what had I just inherited. So again, like with Spy School, I couldn't find the school. I couldn't find the process to help me figure that out. So that's what I did my deep search on. And that's what I built, which then became the essence of the coaching work that I do with people.
And were you in Entrepreneurs Organization when the business partner defrauded from you? And what role did that play, or what did your forum play in helping you through that period of time?
It's interesting. One role that my forum played, sort of that set the stage for it, when I was taking in this business partner, I had a couple of forum mates who had done businesses that were like that with a similar kind of structure. And they reviewed my contract and they suggested putting in a clause in the contract that if there was any financial misdoing And they told me I had to be specific and put a dollar value on it. And I put in over $1,000 that I could sue him personally. Because when we created a business together and we both had LLCs, and so our respective LLCs were the partners in this new business. So they said if there was any financial fraud, if I sued him, he would just, if I sued the LLC, he would
collapse his LLC. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They say that you can sue him personally. So I put that phrase in, that clause in, and my own attorney said, we can't put that in, it'll never pass. And I went back and forth. My own attorney who I was paying sent me 3 versions of the contract without it in, right? Until I finally lost it on him. And he's like, okay. And he put it in, and we get to signing. And at signing, my business partner to be's attorney says, we can't allow this clause in, you can sue him personally. And so I said, oh, can I talk to you in the hall? So we went out in the hallway and I said, listen, just tell me now, do you plan on embezzling or committing fraud? And he said, no, of course not. I said, well, then do you have any problem with putting this clause in? And he said, no, I guess not. So we went back in and he told his attorney to leave the clause in. So because that clause was in there, I was able to sue him personally. Wow. So that was invaluable help from my forum that I never would have gotten. My attorney certainly would never in a million years have suggested that.
Yeah.
But it's funny so a couple of things though, when this happened, some support that I did get, people just helped me understand a little bit and said, just think about, they made me sit down and think about what I wanted to get out of the court process. But also when this was happening, and I'm really glad to share this on this podcast because there might be others out there. I actually withdrew when that was happening.
Not uncommon that people do that. There may be, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but there could be shame. There could be a lot of different emotions going through.
And I think also there was a belief that I should handle this by myself. I should be able to handle it by myself. And I think that's a really common thing that people have also is, I can't ask for help. I should know this. I should be able to handle this myself.
Yeah. So looking back on it now, how would you have done things differently with that insight?
Yeah, I probably would have leaned out for a lot more support. I mean, I felt okay with going through. I mean, I truly never had the emotional reaction. Like I still don't really feel anger towards him. I mean, it sucks what happened. It totally sucks. I had this business I had built up for a really long time. So much of the value of that business was destroyed because of his actions. So much of my time was taken up, but I actually have just a perspective on it that I think I got from that whole thing of spy school, like things just happen and you deal with what happens. But afterwards, I think it would have been really helpful to reach out and connect with people as I was going through the rebuilding of my life. And I didn't. I really struggled through that on my own.
Let's talk about, we said at the beginning, we talked about leading with curiosity. You demonstrated some curiosity by when you called the bank and they said there are 2 accounts. Oh, that's natural curiosity, right? And then you went to the clients and you talked to them and led with curiosity. Let's talk a little bit about that idea, how leaders can leverage it beyond just hopefully beyond just when you're being defrauded, but in other instances as well.
John, it's such a rich topic. And it is such a challenge for most of us, because we go through life trying to be efficient and we have enormous, incredible to-do lists and trying to get through everything on it. And so it is efficient to categorize things and to reach conclusions and to make decisions quickly. But in doing that, we miss so much information, and missed information is the same as getting misinformation. And so whether that is on the one-to-one level, when we're dealing We're having a one-to-one conversation. And I want people to think about like that could be a one-to-one conversation with a loved one, with your child, with your spouse, with a key team member, with a client. And as we're listening to them, we're thinking about what we're going to say next. We're thinking about what they're saying and we're figuring out if it makes sense. We're figuring out, do we agree with it? Do we not agree with it? But in doing that, we're missing so many cues that they're giving us. Mm. And so one of the key things, and I learned this, we're in EO, we're taught in the forum, right, that you're supposed to, when you're listening to people giving their 5% reflections or giving their presentation, to really listen to everything they're saying. But we're not. We're thinking at that time. So I try to, being a forum trainer and then working with forums, right, trying to teach that. And I will say, I learned that skill from my spy school experts. I learned that skill from the CIA and the FBI experts in the deception detection. When they're working with somebody and they're trying to figure out what's going on and get the truth out of somebody, I thought, oh, they've got these super analytical minds. And
no, they're just curious. Yeah.
Yeah. They have total quiet mind.
Yep. Yeah. And I can verify that because, I worked in the Clinton White House. So I went through an FBI background check. And they came out and interviewed me and asked me questions about my background, high school, college, stuff like that. One moment of levity was they were asking me about like college or something, which I went to a party school. So let me just leave that there. And they're asking, what was it like? And I'd been advised, like, just lay it all out there. The worst thing you can do is just not tell them about something. So I was like, my college, we had a party house. We'd have parties kind of frequently, and people come over, and we had kegs, and people would drink from it and stuff like that. And I remember one of them, FBI agent, looks at me and he says, "Did you have a drinking problem in college?" And I wanted to say, "Didn't everybody?" I mean, but I didn't. But yeah, they natural curiosity, like they just would kind of follow through and ask you about different things around your background.
Yeah. And you probably experienced with them too, then when you finish speaking, they probably wouldn't jump right in with the next question. They would probably pause for a minute before the next question.
Yeah. Yeah. Wait and see if something else comes out. Because sometimes that dead space, people will want to fill it and you get some good information out of them.
It's two things. Absolutely. You let that space sit for a second. But also, if you haven't been thinking about what you're going to say while the person's talking, there will be a pause because you're taking in what they say.
Right.
And then you're responding to it.
Yeah.
And it was such a learning for me. And also when they get really quiet mind and they just put all of their focus and attention on you, that's when you can notice the difference in somebody's voice, the difference in their expression, the difference in their body language. But it's about taking that time and that curiosity to, instead of jumping to a conclusion or filling in what you're going to say or filling in your mind what you think they're going to say next, really being present.
I'm curious. So I worked for the last law firm I worked for before I went on my own, became an entrepreneur, was actually embezzled. And the woman that was the controller had taken over $1 million over many years. And they discovered this about 6 months after I left. And I know that the managing partner like marched in with the proof and confronted her about it. There wasn't a lot of thought, I think, that went into that experience. But, with your business partner, looking back on it now, I don't know if the lawyers that you were working with advised you against that, but given what you've just said about the curiosity, do you think that would have been one approach to take if you'd had the emotional control to do it, to go into the business partner and see with natural curiosity and see what information you could have gotten out of him?
At that point, I got the information from the bank and I got information from our clients and I had all of the company records and you had
what you needed.
Goodness, made a few silly mistakes because he was all of the records. When I typed into the company system, there were all of our records, but there were also all of his company records and the records from where he was funneling the money. So I had
You had all that.
I had all of the evidence, right? I mean, I certainly could have had a conversation with him about why he did it, but to tell you the truth, I didn't really care. Like I knew it was just bad decisions, and I knew I could see that his original company sales were falling off in his original company. So I knew he was under financial strain.
Yeah. So, I mean, and frequently lawyers will say not to do something like that because they don't want to risk compromising some other evidence that might come in. So talk a little bit more about some of that work that you do now with forums and with business leaders, tapping into that curiosity and how they can leverage that. Especially now, we're recording this at the end of 2024 on the cusp of 2025, and AI is a big tool that everyone's talking about. I know you just did a presentation actually to a group about that. So talk a little bit about how business leaders, entrepreneurs can tap into their natural curiosity as this like really disruptive technology is coming right down the pike.
I think the most important thing is to recognize what gets in the way of curiosity. A couple of things get in the way of curiosity. One is judgment. Seriously, you can't like hold judgment and curiosity at the same time. And the other thing that gets in the way of curiosity is discomfort with uncertainty. Right? Because curiosity is uncertainty. And we very much want to know what's going on. And you talk about AI, and for a lot of people, that is scary because it is an unknown and they can't figure it out. It's just so rather than getting curious about it, the fear has kicked in because that discomfort with uncertainty. And so when the fear kicks in, the curiosity shuts down. So the most important thing is that mindset and recognizing that as long as we let fear dominate, right? Fear kicks off everything from the base, from our limbic system, the very primitive base of our brain. And we go into a state of what's called amygdala hijack. And when you're in that state, your prefrontal cortex shuts down, and your prefrontal cortex is where reasoning is, and language and collaboration and creativity. So you don't have access to that when you're in a fear state. So I think the most important thing for entrepreneurs and for everyone right now with the changes that we're facing with AI is to recognize that fear, and that if we stay in that, we will not be able to function, and to find ways to get curious and start to learn. And so some of the work that I do with forums, because the communication, like curiosity improves communication, right? It's like what helps us build bridges instead of building walls. When I'm actually naturally curious about you, as opposed to judging anything that I think about you, you feel safer, you feel more open, we have a more authentic dialogue.
Yeah.
But
well, I mean, as someone who is endlessly curious about so many different topics, this totally resonates with me. And I love this idea. I know we're almost out of time. So Alana, I want to thank you for all of your time here today. Where can people go to learn more about you and connect with you?
My website is alanawinter.com, easy. And if they want to learn about Spy School, there's stilettospyschool.com and mi6academy.com.
Yeah, go check out those websites. Really cool. And EO and YPO forums and other types of forums can reach out to you about different forum transformation. And I know that you got rave reviews when you came out here to San Francisco. So Alana, thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure, John. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.